Okay, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. My name is Rafi Shulman and it's a pleasure to have you. I'd like to just take a moment and introduce you to the moderator who's joining me tonight, Dion Carreira. Hi Dion, why don't you take a moment and just tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. Good evening, everybody. As Rafi mentioned, my name is Dion Carreira. I am one of the owners of Israel Prop, which is a real estate company. To put things in perspective, why am I being asked to talk about Raanana this evening? 7th of January 1996. I emigrated to Israel directly to Raanana, and I've been here ever since. Raised 4 children in the city, so I've been through the school system, for good and for bad. Sporting wise as well. I've enjoyed rugby in Raanana. My wife actually started netball, so we have a history with Raanana. So I'm hoping as the evening goes on, I can part a little bit of my experience and what I know about the city onto you, which will give you a better idea of what we're talking about.
Wonderful. We have over 120 people who have registered from around the world, and it always gives me tremendous pleasure to know that the people who are joining who are interested in making Aliyah, who are interested in buying a home in Israel. And that's really the purpose of these webinars, is to share some advice, to share some information, to give you some practical tips, and really help you in your process, whether it is to buy a home in Israel, to make Aliyah now or down the road. And so hopefully you'll find this webinar to be very useful and informative. Before we get started, there's just a couple of things I want you to keep in mind. The first thing is that we are going to do a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it into the chat window, the Q&A window, and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. Keep in mind that we can get to everyone's questions, and so I really encourage you to reach out to Dion and myself. We'll share our contact information also at the end, and we want to have these one-on-one conversations with you to really understand what are your concerns, what are your goals, what are your plans, how can we help you. Obviously, everyone's story is different, everyone's scenario is different, and so we want to be able to have these one-on-one conversations. We're going to try and reach out to you in the next week or two. With Pesach coming up, it might be a little challenging, but please don't wait for us. Feel free to email us, call us, WhatsApp us. We'll schedule time to talk, and we'll help you in any way that we can. Another thing to keep in mind is we will be recording this, so if you've come late or you need to leave early, don't worry about it. We'll send out a recording in the next couple of days, so you'll be able to watch it. And please also share it with other people. A lot of people emailed us to say that they can't join tonight, but they'd love to see a recording. So if you know anyone else who's interested in making Aliyah, or if they're living here already and they want to buy a property and they want to move to Raanana, feel free to share it with them. Okay, and then last but not least, we're also going to talk about a little perk, a little thank you that Olim Advisors is offering to people who are attending this webinar and are interested in buying a home, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the webinar as well, so just stay tuned. Okay, so I want to just take a moment and take a step back in time and go back to 2016, which is when we started Olim Advisors. And initially, we really had 2 goals in mind. The first goal was to help and encourage people to make Aliyah. As many of you know, it's not an easy process. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, a lot of challenges you have to overcome. And we want to help people during the pre-Aliyah stage to make those decisions, to find the right community, to find the right schools, to find the right home. These are so important, such important decisions, and we're here in Israel to really guide people through the process. And then the second part is when people get to Israel, there's so many challenges that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Things like bureaucracy and registering kids for school and dealing with the bank and healthcare and so on and so forth. Things that a lot of us took for granted when we lived in the States and Canada and South Africa and UK. But when you get to Israel, it's a different language, it's a different culture, and it's challenging. And so we want to help you not just get to Israel or not just buy a property in Israel, but really have a very successful, a very rewarding, a very happy life in Israel. And so that's the second part of what we set out to do. Now, a couple of years ago, as we were helping people make Aliyah, a lot of people who were living in Israel already, a lot of the Anglos were turning to us and saying, you know what, when when we made Aliyah, we weren't ready to buy. In fact, most Olim don't buy a home before they make Aliyah. But now that we've been in Israel for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, now we're ready to buy. And we need help because most people who are looking to buy a home have two concerns. The first one is, what's the process like, and how is it so different from what other people are used to in other countries? Whether it's things like buying on paper or getting a mortgage that has multiple sub-mortgages, the whole process from A to Z is very different, and people are looking for help to guide them through the process and to find the right communities. A lot of people turn to us and say, we want to move to Israel, but we don't know where, or we want to buy in Israel, we don't know where. And that's one way that we can help people find a home in Israel. The second way is by introducing people to our network of professionals. So individuals like Dion, who we've carefully selected. These are people that we've vetted. These are people that we've worked with to help us and to help our clients go through this transaction. And that's really important to realize, because unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this industry who really aren't after your best interest. They simply are looking to get that commission check, and they might lead you in the wrong direction. And so what we want to do is we want to really protect your interests. And the way that we do that is by, through the services that we provide here at Olim Advisors, and then through the services that our realtors, our mortgage brokers, our bankers, our real estate lawyers provide to really protect your interests and make sure that you're getting what you're looking for. So with that in mind, I want to talk about the first point, which is the importance of a soft landing. So if you're thinking about making Aliyah, a lot of people talk about a soft landing, which in essence means moving to a community where you fit in, moving to a community where you're comfortable. And there are a few things that go into this, a few reasons why it is a good thing to consider. The first thing is that you don't feel like a fish out of water. So if you move to Raanana, if you move to Modi'in, you move to Netanya, to Jerusalem, where there's a large Anglo community, you don't have to deal with a new culture. You don't have to necessarily deal with a situation where no one speaks English. And you don't have to deal with everyone who doesn't understand your mindset. So in essence, you're moving to an area that people understand where you're coming from, where you feel comfortable connecting with them. And to a large extent for you, and if you have children, moving to a city like Raanana makes that transition a lot less jarring. Another thing to keep in mind is the familiarity. And what I mean by that is that many of us, when we lived in other countries before we made Aliyah, lived in a comfortable home, a large home. We're familiar with our stores. And when you move to Israel, a lot of people have to downsize. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the prices of home share, and it's just, for many people, it's not affordable to buy a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom house with a backyard. And so when you move into a city like Raanana, there's more options, because a lot of the other cities, the ones that have less of an Anglo community, don't have a lot of houses. So most people are moving into apartments. So you really have to adjust to that. And the same thing with stores. If you've lived in Israel, you've probably heard of Osher Ad, and you've probably heard of Kirkland, the Costco brand. And so for many people, being able to go to stores and buy brands that they're familiar with. I live in Shmonaim, for example, and there's a little makolet that sells a lot of American products. And so for me, for my family, and for our friends, that familiarity is something that really makes the transition easier. And of course, the language. So you don't have to break your teeth when you're trying to speak to teachers, or you're trying to speak to a banker, or you're trying to speak to somebody in the store. These things really make a difference. And then the next point that I mentioned here is that it's really huge for kids, especially for older kids. When we made Aliyah, our oldest kid was 10 years old. And so he was kind of borderline. He's getting to the point where socially, academically, things were getting a little tougher, but he wasn't, it wasn't as old as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, where it really becomes a bigger issue. And so if you're thinking about making Aliyah, and you have kids, then this is something that is extremely important, because it will make a huge difference. And for those of you who have made Aliyah with kids, you know that if your kids are happy, you're going to be happy, right? That's really a big part of the experience, is to set your kids up for success, to make sure that they have their friends, they're doing well in school, they're active in the different activities. And so moving to a city like Raanana, having the soft landing helps a lot, especially for kids. And then the last benefit is the support and the resources. So, when you go to the municipality, when you look at a city like Raanana or Modi'in, these are cities that have a tremendous amount of support, and resources. It could be resources in the schools. So when your kids are in school, they'll have more open hours, or they'll have they'll have people that can come in and provide them additional help and support. And the teachers and the school are more familiar with dealing with Olim kids. And so the support that your kids will get in school, the support and the resources that you will get from the municipality and from other organizations in cities like Raanana really make a huge difference and really make the transition a lot easier. Now, there are a couple of downsides, the other side of the coin, that I just want to mention to you, because it's important that you're aware of the good and the bad. One thing is, of course, the housing costs. If you look at housing in the Anglo bubbles, like a Raanana, like a Jerusalem, like a Modi'in, Ramat Bet Shemesh, the housing costs typically are higher than cities that have more of a mixed community, like Rehovot, for example, Naharia. So that's one thing that you definitely need to keep in mind as you're thinking about buying a home. And the second thing is the Anglo bubble. And what I mean by that is that I think such an important part of making Aliyah, and such a beautiful aspect of making Aliyah, is being integrated into the Israeli community and society, really becoming friends with Israelis and learning from their customs and really living the Israeli lifestyle. And when you move to some cities, some neighborhoods, some areas, sometimes you don't get exposed to that. And so again, it depends on your background, your Hebrew, what you're looking for. But that is one of the downsides of moving to a city where there's a larger Anglo community, that you might not be as exposed. But even in cities that have these large communities like Raanana, there's still plenty of opportunities to make friends with Israelis and spend a lot of time with them. And so, it's just something for you to keep in mind. So that's really what I wanted to share with you. What I'll do now is, Dion, I'll hand it over to you. And Dion's going to go over and talk about the different neighborhoods in Raanana.
Okay, thank you, Rafi. Thank you for that. Before I start, something that Rafi mentioned in the beginning, I just want to reiterate. Every person has a specific set of needs, size of apartment, size of house, area, religious, non-religious, etc., etc. So the purpose of what I'm going to be doing tonight is just to give you an overall understanding of our city, Raanana. And then towards the end of my presentation, I will also show you a couple of options, buying apartments that are off plan, some things that are ready to buy immediately, some things that need renovations, etc., etc. And I'll talk a bit about rent. But it might not apply to each of your individual needs. So as Rafi mentioned, if you do want something more specific, please do reach out. Let us know exactly what your needs are. And then from there, we'll be able to send you something more specific to your needs. So Raanana, basically Raanana is one of the smallest cities in the Sharon area. The Sharon area is made up of Raanana, Kfar Saba, Herzliya, Netanya, Hod Sharon, Ramat Sharon, and everything that lies in between. Those are the major cities, also Herzliya Patuach. Raanana itself is 15 square kilometers. On our eastern border, we have the 4 highway, which is a major artery that connects you with pretty much the whole of Israel, which allows for easy exit and access into the city. Our southern border is the new 531 highway, which has made getting into Tel Aviv a 15-minute car drive, and we're there. And then we have Yerushalayim Street on the west border and the new Shimon Peres highway on the northern border. Raanana itself is pretty much a square, and everything falls within that square. Central Raanana, which runs along Achuza, is the oldest part of Raanana, obviously. Here you will find older buildings, Not every building will have an elevator, definitely no balconies. The apartment sizes are generally larger, they're bigger, but they are older, unless of course they've been renovated. And then Chuza itself runs 3.3 kilometers. That's the length of the road, which runs from east to west. So on the eastern side of Chuza, you will find that there are a lot of cottages. And then as you move along to the west side of Chuza, there are more residential buildings, which are apartments. From the year 2003, people got a little bit lazy, and instead of naming the areas within Raanana like they used to, Kiryat Golom, Kiryat Eliezer, Kiryat Sharet, etc., they decided to name the city, the section of the city, by the date that the plans were approved to develop that particular part of Raanana. So if you're doing your research and you come across an area that is called 2003, that basically means that the buildings there were built around about the 2003 time span. Obviously 2004, same thing in 2005. The 2003 area in Raanana is on the northwest side of Raanana. The 2004 area is on the northeast, and the 2005 area, which is the closest to Herzliya, that is on the southwest. Just recently, 2015, Raanana decided that it needed to expand. So on the northern part of Raanana, they developed an entire new area of 3,600 apartments, and they named that Neve Zemel, which is basically after famous singers and actors from Israel. The beauty about the 2015 area is that the entire area is a green build. And Raanana is very, very focused on meeting the needs of getting a green certificate, which means that for X amount of people living within that area, they have to have X amount of parks, X amount of trees. The trash removal system separates foods from plastics, from wrappings, etc. So it was an interesting development for Raanana, and it's actually at the moment the most sought after area because of what it is. And recently, Raanana has decided that it wants to. We currently have 85,000 citizens living in Raanana. And the municipality, the mayor, has decided that he would like to increase that number from 85,000 to 120,000. And in order to accommodate the increase in the number of people, they have now developed the entire southern part of Raanana, which runs along that 5-3 highway that I mentioned, from the 4 all the way around to the huge Raanana Park. It's divided into 2 sections. The 2019 section was approved in 2019, and they've already started building. There are buildings going up, and later on I'll show you 1 or 2 projects from that area. And the 2022 was approved last year, and they're in the final stages of rezoning. We guesstimate that the building there will start probably in another 18 months to 24 months. And that basically circumvates the entire Raanana Park area, which means if you can imagine New York, where you've got Central Park, and around Central Park, you've got an entire city that's built around that, same sort of idea. 2019 area, they are building 3,400 new units. And in the 2022 area, they're building 3,600 units. So there's going to be roughly an additional 6,000 apartments, which the idea is to accommodate the 30,000 new citizens that they're expecting. Based on that as well, there has been a change made to the public transportation system. We're now in the final stages of approving the underground metro, which basically connects Kfar Saba to Raanana to Herzliya, all the way through to Tel Aviv, Bat Yam, Rishon LeZion. I think it's a 48-kilometer route. A lot of it is underground, but the idea is that you can hop on the train, you don't have to take your car, and you can get to all of these neighboring cities. something that's important to mention about Raanana and why is all of this new development taking place. About 10 years ago, we realized that the demographics of Raanana was changing. All of the younger, the kids that were 16, 17, 18, started leaving Raanana and moving to neighboring cities because Raanana, as we know, is a religious city. Friday afternoons and Saturdays, the basically city shuts down. And there wasn't much for the younger generation to do. And prices, which we will discuss in a bit, are also not the cheapest. So we noticed that more and more of the youth were leaving. So the whole idea of this new 2019 and 2022 project that's being developed is to bring back the youth, to get them to come back into Raanana. High-tech in Raanana is huge. The industrial area has got one of the hugest high-tech parks in Israel. And on the western side of Raanana at the moment, where the train station is, they're developing a new high-tech park over there as well. So they're trying to entice these youngsters to come back. And one of the things that they've decided is that 20% of those 6,000 apartments are going to be three-roomed apartments, roughly 65 to 75 square meters, where the prices are a lot lower than what they used to be. And we've noticed that that is starting to draw back the youth. So all of a sudden, you've got a rejuvenation of Raanana, where you've got a lot of young families. There's a lot of pressure on the preschools at the moment because there's a lot of young children. So Raanana's managed to achieve what they wanted to do. And we noticed that things are picking up and that the youngsters are coming back. Now, as you can see, Rafi's just moved on to the next slide. As I said, 85 to 120,000 residents. 20% of the apartments now have to be 3 rooms, which is catering for the younger. We're currently marketing 7 projects in Raanana, which is roughly 120 apartments. But there are a lot of new builds going up. 3,600 apartments and 3,400 apartments. Do the math, each building's got about 20 apartments. There's a lot of building going on. One thing that some of you may know, some of you may know, when we talk about a 3-room apartment, a 4-roomed apartment, 3 rooms means 2 bedrooms. 4 rooms means 3 bedrooms. In Israel, you count your living space, which is your kitchen, your dining room, and your living room area as a room. So if you hear of somebody saying, yeah, we live in a 5-roomed apartment, that means they have 4 bedrooms. If somebody says we have a 4.5 room, that half room is generally a room that does not have a window. So they would either use it as an office or as a storage room or a pantry and things like that. So it is an extra space, but it generally cannot be used as a bedroom. Although sometimes they do have windows, but they are much smaller. Where an average bedroom is 12 to 15 square meters, the half rooms would be 6 to 8 square meters. So definitely not bedroom applicable. 4-roomed apartments. Currently, we have a few projects where you can start for as low as 2.5 million shekels. But price ranges for new projects, you're looking at between 27 to 35,000 shekels per square meter. So a 100 square meter apartment can go as high as 3.5 million. It just depends what you're looking for.
Dion, for the apartments that you mentioned that are kind of catered towards the younger crowd, is there an age restriction there? I know there's certain lotteries that are geared towards younger families, first-time buyers. Are those going to be open to anyone that when he moves into that? Because when we talked about it initially, we thought it might also be something that older couples might be interested in, especially if they have kids and grandkids in Raanana, and they can buy a 3-room apartment. Is that going to be available to them as well? Or is it only going to be?
No, most definitely. It's a free market. What you're talking about is the Mahir Mishteken project, right, which you have to have special requirements, and it's a lottery. But in Raanana, we actually don't have that. There are no Mahir Mishteken projects at the moment. it didn't work. So they did away with that.
Right.
The 3-room apartments for whoever wants it. I mean, if an investor is looking to buy, if it's a young couple, if it's an older couple that no longer have children at home, they now have the availability.
Mm-hmm.
Up until a couple of years ago, 4 rooms was the smallest you could get, and a lot of people found that those were just too big and too expensive for their needs.
Got it.
Okay, so let me just see, where were we? Okay, so we spoke about the new projects all over Raanana. Starting price is around about 2.4 million. And because of the change recently in the interest rates, the government decided that they needed to curb the rise in property prices in Israel. So the interest rates skyrocketed quite a bit. So there's a unique opportunity that's presenting itself currently, where a lot of the developers, a lot of the builders are basically saying, put 20% down now, and the remaining 80%, you only have to pay us in 2 to 3 years' time. When the apartments are ready, you pay us the balance when you get the keys. So for a lot of people that are worried about, will I be able to get a mortgage? I'm only planning on making Aliyah in 2 years. Or we're not ready to buy just yet, we still need to sell our homes. There are projects at the moment which would actually allow you to make that investment within your parameters, obviously, and make it a lot easier to complete the actual payments. Up until this 20-80 split or 30-70, depending on the developer, most of the projects, as you sign the contract, you had to put 30% down. And then as the buildings developed, as they reached certain stages, you had to pay another 20, another 30, which put a lot of strain on people. So now buying off plan has actually become a lot easier. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
And I also know in many projects, they'll give a discount as an incentive for buyers to come in the earlier stage. And so what a lot of buyers or investors will do is that they'll buy it and then they'll flip it, because prices typically will jump once the building is ready for occupancy. And so, this is another difference between the Israeli real estate and other markets, is they're buying on paper, which is what Dion's really describing, is something that is pretty common. You have to be careful. You have to make sure that you're working with a developer who is bank guaranteed. So if they go out of business, the bank is going to step in. But there definitely are a lot of opportunities either to invest or to buy. As Dion mentioned, if you're not coming for a couple of years, or if you want to still rent and you're ready to move in a couple of years, this is a great option to consider.
Correct. So I was just about to actually discuss what you mentioned.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. There's 2 types of projects. They call it tama, which is basically making the building stronger against earthquake. That was how the whole thing started. The government decided that buildings that were built prior to 1985 didn't meet the current earthquake standards. So what they said to the municipalities was, we want you to strengthen the buildings. So the municipalities turned around and said, well, we can't afford it. So what they in turn did was they turned to developers and they said, okay, you guys strengthen the buildings. While you're doing that, add in a security room, the mamad. You can add in balconies, and we'll give you another 2.5 floors on top of each building. And you can then sell those for profits to basically cover your costs and to make a profit. And up until this year, that has been a lot of the new apartments that have been on the market have come through that system, which was called Tama 38/1. Now they've changed direction a little bit again, and there's now Tama 38/2, which instead of keeping the existing building of 3 to 4 floors and adding on 2.5 floors on top, they're now saying, let's take down the entire building, and you can now put in underground parking, and you can build from scratch, which gives the developers the opportunity to put in a lot more apartments, to use better design options, and get more apartments out of the buildings, etc., etc. So when you're buying off paper, as Rafi mentioned, you need to understand the difference between Tama 38/1 and Tama 38/2, because the pricing is reflective of that. The first option, you're looking at between 27 to 30,000 shekels per square meter. The second option from 30,000 up to as high as 38,000 shekels per square meter. But in the second option, you're almost guaranteed getting underground parking, getting a storage room, getting a balcony as well. And there's a lot of projects at the moment that are also putting in gyms and swimming pools into the building as well.
So you're getting a new apartment. It's new, insulation, it's electrical wiring, it's everything, right?
Getting a brand new apartment from scratch. Whereas in the first option, some of the apartments are still older, but the ones that the developer has built, they're brand new. But the base, the base of the building is still old. So you've got your old pipes, your old electricity, etc., etc. So basically, in conclusion, Raanana itself as a city, we're looking at increasing from 85 to 30,000 citizens. It's growing and it's growing rapidly. The youth are definitely returning to Raanana, which is making it a young, vibrant city. Unfortunately, that also means that the cost of living in Raanana is increasing, but that's a good thing. I've always said, and I've said this from the day that I arrived, we've always paid high rates and taxes in Israel, in Raanana. It's always been high, but every single day when you go out into the street, you see the money working for you. The streets are clean, the gardens are always fruitful. You've got flowers, you've got trees, you've got fruit trees down a Chuza, which you can walk and take the fruit off the trees and actually eat it. So you do see the returns for that. Raanana has put a huge onus on rejuvenating the center of Raanana by using the Tama projects. So you've got entire roads that look like they're brand new developments, but the streets have been there and the buildings have been there for nearly 40, 45 years. And currently, Raanana is rated as one of the top 10 cities to live in Israel. And one of the things, the final thing that I want to discuss about Raanana before we move on to looking at some properties is the education. As of this month and for the last 3 months, Raanana has actually been the #1 city in the country for education. We've got a rating of 89.8, which is phenomenal. The schooling in Raanana is outstanding. Really high level of education. There's things called megamot. I think the best way to describe that would be majors. Every single school has got a different focus, whether it's computer science, whether it's basketball, whether it's dance, whether it's athletics, cyber. The schools have all taken a specific major and they offer these to their children. So children that are looking to get involved in things like that can already start learning in the school system. The sports in Israel is very similar to South Africa. In Raanana is very similar to what we had in South Africa, where you've got sport in the schools, and then you've got your clubs outside as well, where all the children can take part. It gives all the children what's the word for Miss Garrett?
Like a boundary.
Like boundaries. Every single day you know that you've got training from this until this time, so your children aren't getting up to mischief. So the educational system in Raanana is one of the best. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of Anglo-Saxons, when they come, one of the cities that they consider is Raanana. As Rafi mentioned, it's a soft landing. You have the language. You have diversity. You can get from 3 rooms, 4 rooms, 5 rooms, penthouses, garden apartments, cottages, villas. When you fly overhead, if you take a drone and you fly over the west of Raanana, almost every single house has got swimming pools, which is something that not every city has. So it's really a soft landing. And as I said, I've been here now for, this is my 28th year, and never have I thought about leaving Raanana. I've thoroughly enjoyed my stay here.
Wonderful.
Rafi, if you don't mind, let's move over now to a couple of apartments, just to give our viewers an idea of what's out there. So this particular apartment is in a Tama building. It's an old apartment. The apartment itself is about roughly 158 square meters. It's going to have a 12 square meter balcony. The building itself will have an elevator. You're going to have a storage room, and it's going to have a covered parking as well. Because you're buying an older apartment in a new development, the price for this apartment over here is 3,295,000. It does need about 500,000 shekels renovations to get it up to today's standards. So if you do the math, 3 another 500,000, you're looking at roughly 3.8 million, and you're getting yourself a brand new apartment smack bang in the middle of Raanana. You cannot get more central than this. The new apartments that the developer is selling on the top floors, copy paste the identical apartment, are starting from 4.4 million shekels. So here is an opportunity to get yourself currently 5 rooms. Once the development is finished, it will be 6 rooms. You can get a 6-room apartment, do the renovations, which will take roughly 6 months. It'll come in all in at about 3.8 million, and you'll immediately have yourself an apartment that's comparable to the new ones on top, where they're selling at start 4.4 million. But as the development progresses and they get closer to finishing, those apartments will be closer to the 4.6, 4.7 mark. So there are opportunities like this throughout Raanana. It's just a matter of finding them and basically negotiating the price as low as possible. What's nice about this is if you're not planning on moving in immediately, you can basically move along with the build and structure the payment structure, which makes it a lot easier, and you don't have to put all the money up front. So that's one option of something that can be done.
And if you're converting to, if you're familiar with feet, then you can just multiply times 10 approximately. So 158 meters is about 1,600 square feet.
1,600 square feet, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Okay, so if we can have the next one. Okay. This is a project that we sold from A to Z. We actually started the pre-sale 7 days after COVID started, and we've sold all of the apartments except for one. This is the last apartment that's out there. This is a Tama 1 project. So if you're looking at the picture, the first 4 floors were existent. They were there. So what we did in this particular building is we added on the security rooms, we added in balconies, we put in an elevator as well, and at the back of the building we have put parking spaces. We then added on 1 garden apartment on the right-hand side, and then the 5th, 6th, and 7th floors. The 5th and 6th floors are 8 4-room apartments, and the top floor's got 2 penthouses. So the apartment that's left here is a 4-room apartment, 93 square meters net build. When we discuss off-plan, all the square meterage size or the square feet size, in this case 930 square feet, is net living space. Does not include the interior walls. It's basically the space that you have for living. Once they register this with the land registry and the municipality comes and does their final measurements, you'll probably see this listed as about 115 to 118 square meters, or close to 1,200 square feet. So this is a 4-room apartment, 3 bedrooms. It's got 2 bathrooms, a 9 square meter balcony. I made a mistake here. There's a parking and there's an elevator as well. And this currently is on the market for 2,795,000 shekels.
Dion, what floor is it on?
This one particularly is on the 5th floor. It's facing the west and the south. Now, everybody that's been to this apartment that works in my office, as you walk out into the balcony, you've got open views that you can see Tel Aviv, Herzliya Patuach, Caesarea, and you can actually see the sea line. You can't see the ocean because we're a good 15 kilometers away, but it's open views all the way out to the ocean. It's fantastic, the view that you've got from this apartment. And this one will be ready in 6 months. So for the 2.8 million, you're getting an apartment that within 6 months, you can either live in it or you can rent it out. Bar Ilan 35 is a building that has completed Tama. They finished it. I think they're already at 85% occupancy or 90% occupancy. And this is an apartment on the first floor that was one of the older apartments. And the homeowner asked the builder if he would renovate the apartment at the same time that he was building the new apartments on top. So he paid to have his personal apartment renovated as well, which means all of the electricity, all of the plumbing, air conditioners, all the cabinetry, all the flooring, sanitary ware, everything is brand spanking new. Also 4 rooms, which means three bedrooms. It's got 2 bathrooms. As I said, because this is already completed and the land registry registration has been done, it's listed as 115 square meters. But if you had bought it off plan, it would have also been roughly about 94, 95. What's nice here is it has a much bigger balcony. It's got a 15 square meter balcony. It has an elevator and it has a covered parking space as well. And this particular one is on the market for, I can't actually see the price there, for 3,300,000. So if you do your comparisons, something that's ready and can be moved in tomorrow in the center of Raanana, you're looking here 4 rooms at 3.3 million. The slide that I showed you before, you're looking in 6 months, you'll be getting final possession. You can still buy that for 2.8 million. It's a little bit further out of the center, so I would add on, if it was ready-made and moving in there, you'd probably be able to sell that for 3 million, as opposed to 3.3 in the middle of Raanana. But here's 3 options. An old apartment in a building that's currently going through Tama that needs to be developed. That was the first slide. The second one is buying a new apartment from the developer on a top floor. That'll be ready in 6 months. And this is a third apartment where occupancy is already taking place. People are moving in, and the owner of this one has decided to sell. So you can see how the prices vary slightly. All right, now we're going to start talking about buying on paper. This is in the 2019 project, the one that I discussed, where they are building the 3,400 and the 3,600 units. Brigger is one of the better developers, one of the best. In Netanya, they have the Brigger Yum project, which is their flagship project. You're talking about 4 or 5-room apartments that are selling for 8 to 10 million shekels. And they've now taken to build a project in the south of Raanana. This is going to be ready in 3 years. They've just broken ground, so they've literally last week started the developments. Currently, they're offering 3-room apartments, 4-room apartments, and 5-room apartments. As you can see from these statistics, the 3-room and 4-room apartments, they've all got 2 bathrooms. It's a master ensuite, so you've got a main bedroom with a bathroom, and then you've got a family bathroom. And 9 times out of 10, the family bathroom has got the toilet inside the bathroom, which means the guests, if they need to use the bathroom, they're using the family bathrooms. You can change the plan slightly and make a separate toilet so that you don't have to have that. But the way it's sold off plan is 2 bathrooms. So your 3 rooms are 94 square meters, 940 square feet roughly, 12 square meter balcony, and these are starting at 3,235,000. The 4 rooms, which is 3 bedrooms, also got 2 bathrooms. It's 134 square meters built, so you can see there's an extra 40 odd square meters here. It's a much, much, much bigger apartment with a 19 square meter balcony for 4.1 million for 160. And then your 5 rooms, because it's a much bigger apartment, 158 square meters, here you're getting 2.5 bathrooms. A master ensuite, family bathroom, and a guest bathroom. 25 square meter balcony, and here the off-paper price is 4.9. Now, remembering that, as I discussed in these projects, on this particular one, you've got a 20-80 split, which means if you decided that you wanted to buy into this project, you would choose whichever apartment you wanted, you would choose your directions, and then you would have to put down, as an example, for a 3-room, roughly 650,000 shekels now. And then the balance you'd pay a month before you took possession of the apartment. So that's what we were discussing, the 2080 split. Another thing that I'd like to mention, and this is very, very, very important to understand when you're buying off plan. If you had to buy, as an example, the apartment that's underneath the picture of the building, you can see the floor plan as it is. Currently, you can make any changes within the interior walls with the exception of the security room. Security rooms are solid concrete, floor, ceiling, and external walls, and they all have to be built one on top of the other. So you can never make a change to that. You can't relocate that particular room. But anything else within that apartment, as long as they haven't got up to that floor, you can sit with the architect and you can redesign the apartment and you can change rooms, you can move kitchens, you can move bathrooms, usually at no charge, as long as they haven't got to that floor. Once they get to that particular floor and they start building and things start going in, you can still make changes, but it will be at a change.
Dion, can you talk about the Madad, the building index, because that's something that a lot of people are not familiar with. It applies to most projects, not all of them, but I think it's important if you can just take a minute and talk about that so people understand what that means and how it impacts them.
So the building index is very, very simple. It's the same as a consumer price index. Every month, the government reevaluates the cost of raw materials, and then they decide if prices are increasing or decreasing. The same applies to buildings. The builder here put forward his plans to the municipality, and he got his plans approved in 2019. In 2019, he sat down and he said, in order for me to build this building, it's going to cost me 1 million shekels. Just throwing out a number to make it easy. He's now starting to build in 2022. Over the last 3 years, there's been an increase in the cost of raw materials. So he's now taken that into consideration, and the price that he's asking for the apartment has taken that into account. But if you buy an apartment today and you're only taking possession in 3 years' time, over the next 3 years, there could be an increase in the cost of materials. And the builder is not going to take that risk onto himself. So what the government has said is that 40% of the cost, the increase in cost of the building materials will be borne by the purchaser, and 60% will be covered by the builder. So that basically means that you put down 20% now, what you've paid, you've paid. So let's just say that you bought the apartment for 2 million shekels and you put down 400,000 shekels. So the cost of living can only be applied to the remaining 1.6 million shekels, which means that if next month they decide that the cost of raw materials has gone up by 0.1%, they will take the 1.4 million shekels and increase it by 0.01%. And so forth and so forth and so forth. So over the 36-month period, there may be an overall increase of 4 or 5% on the purchase price. But as a purchaser, basically what that means is that the price of your apartment has also risen as time moves forward. So you're buying currently at 3.235 million, but when you take possession of the apartment in 3 years' time, the apartment will have gone up by 15 to 20%. So if you offset the 5% increase in building costs, you're still coming out with an apartment that's risen in 3 years by 10 odd percent. So that is what the Madad is. That's what the building index is. There are certain developers, and in this case, Brigger is one of them, where if you sign and you take the 2080 split, for the first year, it's not linked to the building index, which means there's no increase in the price for the first year. But then from the second and third year, so the remaining 24 months or whatever the contract states, it will be subject to any increase in building materials.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now that was in the 2019 area, and that was a complete new build. What we have over here is a Tama 1 project where the existing 3 floors exist, and we are now adding on another 2.5 floors. This is a project which we have exclusively. This is in the middle of Raanana in Khankin Street. I actually live the corner of Khankin and Khashmonaim. So I know this area very, very well. The current 3 floors will remain. What we're going to do is we're going to strengthen them. We're going to add on the security rooms, balconies. The building will get an elevator, and there will be 1 regular parking spot for every tenant. The building that's existing, there are 12 apartments, and those 12 apartments are owned by individuals. So we cannot take those apartments from them. So what we are doing is we are basically giving them a new building with all the extras and all the add-ons, and we're making everything look great. But they are still the owners of those 12 apartments. What we are selling is on the 4th floor, the 5th floor, and the 6th floor. We are selling 3-room apartments, 4-room apartments, and 5-room apartments. There are 15 apartments in this particular project. Again, the 3- and 4-room apartments have got 2 bathrooms. The 5-room apartments have got 2.5 bathrooms. And the sizes are very, very similar to the slide before that I showed you for Brigayam. 94 square meters, 134 square meters, and 158. And the balconies are the same, 12, 19, and 25. A very, very, very similar project. The prices are almost identical as well. Difference being this is central Raanana, and the other one is on the south in the new area. There are 2 3-room apartments here that are going at pre-sale. The developer needs to sell 2 apartments so that his supporting bank, the bank that's guaranteeing the project, will release the building funds. So there are 2 3-room apartments that they are selling for 2,650,000. But once those 2 apartments are sold, then we go back to the regular price list, which is what you see here. So that's another option of a Tama project in the middle of Raanana. Okay, this is one of my favorites. This is a project in the northwest of Raanana, which is next to Park Raanana. Very, very, very old area. The current apartments are 3-room apartments that are 60 square meters each. They call it a train building. It's like a long building with 5 or 6 entrances and only 3 floors per building. And each entrance has got 6 apartments. Very small. They were built in the 1970s, so they're crumbling. Really, really not in good condition. Carreira, which is this developer over here, has taken over those apartments, and they are now destroying them completely. And they are building these 3 towers. Now, there's actually 4 towers. There's one at the back. They are building 375 apartments. Out of the 375 apartments, 175 belong to the current tenants in that train building. And they'll be selling, I think it's 210 to be exact, apartments. 3-room apartments, 4-room and 5-room, the same statistics. But here you see the apartment sizes are slightly smaller. 76 square meters for the 3 rooms, 88 square meters for the 4 rooms, and 102 square meters for the 5 rooms. I remind you, net. These are net sizes. So once you do the remeasuring with the balconies and the parking spaces and the storage rooms, you can probably add on between 15 to 20 square meters to each one. So when you're comparing it to second-hand apartments that you find on Yad Shtaim, this 76 square meters would probably be listed as 95 on Yad Shtaim. This is a brand new build. Underground parkings, underground storage rooms. The buildings will have a swimming pool in the middle of all 4. Each building will have its own gym, and each building will also have a conference room. The idea here is that the tenants will be able to use that for birthday parties or business meetings, etc., etc. It's a great project. They haven't even broken ground yet. They're still busy. The current tenants that are living in that train building are leaving. They're supposed to be starting demolition in July. And then the project will start. That's why it's a 4-year project. And once again, this falls in your 2080 frame, which means that you could, for as little as 500,000 shekels, you could be putting down a deposit now. The balance would have to be paid in roughly 4 years, maybe a little bit less. but you'd be buying into a project of 375 brand new apartments, which is a community within itself. And we've already had high demand for this project from the Anglo-Saxon community internationally. South Africans, Americans, British, Australians, funnily enough. There's a huge demand. We have a feeling that this particular project is going to be 70 to 80% Anglo-Saxon because of where it's located. You have Park Raanana right next to it. You have the access roads in and out of Raanana, which is easy getting to Tel Aviv, Netanya, but same way coming back home in the evening. And Carreira is, I think let me just do the math quickly, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. They're currently building 10 projects in Raanana, 10 new buildings, and here's an additional 4. So they're very strong. Okay, Rafi, if we can please just move over to, okay.
That was the last one.
Yeah, before we get to that, we've discussed buying properties. I just want to quickly, for a few minutes, talk about rentals, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people that rentals are important to know the information. Once again, each person's individual needs will determine what type of apartment they need, and then as well, what sort of budget you would be looking for. But just to give you a general rule of thumb, you can currently get 3-roomed apartments for 5,000 to 6,000 shekels a month. 4-roomed apartments from 6,000 to 7,500. 5 rooms from 7,000 to 9,000. Then you've got your penthouses, your duplexes, things like that, which can go from 10 to 25. And rental properties for houses, depending on the type of houses, you can get from 12,000 odd as high as 45. We have a rental that we just did for 45,000 shekels, 600 square meters land, 400 square meters built, swimming pool, home cinema, 2 offices, 7 bedrooms, etc., etc. So if you need a little bit more information about rentals, please do send us an email. You have our details over here, and we will then get back to you. We can send you more item specific, so you can see exactly what you're in for. And one of the things that we do provide is we have a lot of virtual tours of properties that we're involved in. So not only can we send you the basic outline of what it is, we can actually send you the virtual tours so you can actually see the apartments as if you were in them yourselves, which will give you an idea of what the finishings are they renovated, are they not, how much does a renovated apartment cost, how much does an older apartment cost, etc., etc.
Yeah, I've seen those. It's pretty amazing, the level of detail that you can see. Okay, thank you, Dion. And as we talked about at the beginning, this is just a sample of the properties. And, if there's something that you're looking for and Dion didn't go over it, whether it's a budget or specific needs, reach out to us and Dion can definitely go out there and find properties that are suitable for your needs and for your budget. A couple of quick things before we move on to the questions. I alluded to this at the beginning. A little bit of a perk or thank you for people who attended. One of the challenges, the things that are a bit annoying when you move into new properties, dealing with the utility companies and transferring everything over into your name, it literally can take a good few hours to get it sorted out. And so we've done this time and time again. And we just want to help you in your transition, whether you're making Aliyah or moving to Raanana from within Israel. And so if you do move forward and if you like one of the properties that Dion has to sell and you move forward and buy it, let Dion know, let us know, and we'll just take over that, part of it and just, so you don't have to deal with the utility companies. So that's something that we will gladly do. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is that we're thinking about actually coming out to the States. We're not sure yet if it's going to be a physical roadshow or a series of Zoom webinars to really meet people in person, whether it's online or in physical events, because we know that there are a lot of people who are in the US and other countries who just aren't able to come here. And so just be on the lookout for it. We want to, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to finalize the plans. We're going to do it probably in May. And of course, once we have the details, we will share it with you. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop the sharing here so I can look at the questions and we can go through. Dion, can you talk about, there's a question here about the underground. What's the timeline for that metro that you mentioned? Do you have a ballpark figure?
Timeline basically depends on who you're talking to. The municipality would like to push it through as quickly as possible, but there's a lot of resistance from the 2005 area, from the southwest area, because the line itself runs up Huza, but in order for it to join up with the west train station, it has to go under the 2005 area. So what they're trying to find now is the path of least resistance. Even though it's 45 meters underground, they just have to work out that bug. We think that within the next 2 to 5 years, the project will start in 2 years, but it'll probably finish in about 5 years. That's more or less what the general consensus is. But once again, it really does depend on finalizing the route, because there's a lot of resistance to the current route.
Understood. Okay. There's a question here about this Cafe Neto. Somebody, I guess, likes it, wants to know what neighborhood it's in. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
So the Cafe Neto is basically, it's on a Huza street, and it's really, really in the middle of Raanana. It's on the corner of Hagidut Ivri. If I'm remembering correctly, it's traffic light number 14. So if you're looking at addresses, Huza 190, that is 188, 190, and 192 is the complex where Cafe Neto sits.
Okay. There's a question here about the new buildings. Are any of them going to have a concierge desk or security in the lobby?
I think the Briga and Kedar are talking about it. But let me explain it another way. The facility will be there. In the lobby itself, there will be a desk. There will be a reception area. They put out chairs and they put out waiting area and things like that. The actual running of the concierge, in other words, employing somebody to sit and to monitor, a security guard or a front desk person, things like that, that will be on the tenants. So when you have your annual general meeting, which happens once a year, the entire building will have to agree that they would like to do that. And the cost of that would be split between the tenants. But the actual facility will be there. The builders are putting it in, yes.
Got it. Okay, there's a question here also about dog friendly, whether it's for people who want to rent or to buy. Are there any restrictions, or they're all?
That all depends on the owner of the apartment. Some yes, some no. There's some people that strictly forbid animals of any type. There'll be others that say dogs as long as they're medium size and under. There'll be some that really don't care. One of the nice things about Raanana is that on every block there is a dog park. It's a gated community with all different toys, slides, seesaws, things that the dogs can jump over, run through. So the city itself is very, very dog friendly. A lot of paths, a lot of walkways that you can take the dogs for walks. But the apartments themselves, it depends on the owner.
And if people are buying, are the developers, do they restrict so if somebody's buying, then it's up to them. There's no restrictions.
Definitely not. There's no restrictions whatsoever. You buy the apartment, you're the owner, you make that choice.
Okay. There's a question about the neighborhood in Neve Zemer. The question is Neve Zemer completely secular, or is it a mix?
It's completely secular. And I know this from the amount of people that approach us looking to rent and looking to buy. The religious people do not want to go to Neve Zemer. There aren't any major shuls, synagogues. So that means the walk to the major synagogues in Raanana, which is Shiftei Israel or Al-Ari or the Beit Lubavitch and things like that, is half an hour to 40 minutes. So I would say that 95% of Neve Zemer are young families, young children, secular. I actually sold an apartment in Neve Zemer that was bought by a religious couple that came from Jerusalem. They couldn't even get the building to agree to put in a Shabbat elevator. It was so secular, so they decided to sell and to move. They actually went back to Jerusalem.
There's a question here about larger apartments, the 4 or 5 bedrooms, so 5 or 6 rooms, and there's a few that you mentioned. Do you have any projects that have duplex apartments?
All of them will have the newer ones. Not the Tama one where they're adding on 2.5 floors onto the existing building. If a builder is developing from scratch, from zero, there will be duplexes. Duplex and penthouse. Duplex basically means 2 floors, you've got stairs. Penthouse is 1 level, but you can get 6-room penthouses, 6-room duplexes, even 7-room duplexes. If you're looking in the older buildings, you'd have to look for what's called a rooftop apartment, which is also 2 floors. You normally have 4 bedrooms and the living space on the bottom floor. And then you go up the stairs and you'll have another 1 or 2 bedrooms and then a huge rooftop area, which can be used for entertainment. So once again, anybody's got a specific request and wants something like that, shoot me an email and I can then send you properties. There definitely are.
Okay, great. There are a few requests here for a map, which is something that we probably should have thought of beforehand. So maybe after this, we can send a map, with the recording, with the link to the recording. We'll send it out to everyone so they can get a sense of where the neighbors are. I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely no problem. I've got a Raanana map, which is issued by the area. All the streets are listed, all the schools are listed, all the synagogues are listed, shopping areas. It's got an index on the side. You can basically see where everything is.
Okay, great. I think that's covered it. We covered most of the questions, not all of them. There's one question here about other communities that are religious, that maybe are less of an Anglo, and there's quite a few. There's cities that have been well known, cities that have a mix like Modi'in, cities like Rehovot. And so, as I mentioned when we first started this webinar, if you're interested in Raanana, then Dion's, the person to go to, and between Dion and myself, we can definitely help you find the right property in Raanana. If you're looking at other cities, Dion and his partner Shoshi also serve other communities as well, Tel Aviv, Herzliya. There's other cities where they sell properties. And of course, with Olim Advisors, we cover the entire country from north to south, east to west. And we can, we'll gladly sit down with you and really understand what you're looking for and then help you identify a few communities that you can then take a look at. So I'd like to just thank Dion again. Thank you so much for your time, for joining us and for the information. And thank you all for joining us. Be on the lookout for other webinars because this is something that we want to do on a regular basis. And we look forward to talking to you. Reach out to us. We'll reach out to you and we will try and help you to the best of our ability. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Have a great week. And if we don't see you before Pesach, have a Chag Sameach and enjoy. And we'll see you soon. Be well.
Thanks very much, Rafi. Thank you.
Be well.